All right, time for another lecture video in philosophy and film. The topic of this lecture is evil and good, and this is part one. We're going to talk about what evil is, talk about the woman and the serpent, and then talk about Socrates' answer to this question. What is evil? Well, we can think about a lot of different things, but in a simple sense, philosophers would say, well, evil, when you're talking about things that human beings do, you're talking about choices that human beings make that we consider to be morally wrong, such as murder, rape, torture, theft, other things of this nature. Traditionally, philosophers call this moral evil. So it's a general agreement about what these things are in the world, although people might disagree about specifics or about whether a particular incident fits into the category, but generally we're in agreement that there is such a thing as moral evil, and it does exist in the world. People choose to do morally bad things. So the philosophical question we're concerned about in this section of the course is why we do these bad things. Why do people commit acts of moral evil? It seems like if we know what the right thing to do is, we would do it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. So the question is, why, do we know what the right thing to do is? Well, if we do know, why do we choose to do otherwise? So now I want to talk a little bit about a story you may be familiar with. It's the story of the woman and the serpent. So the lines of dialogue. The serpent said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that's in the middle of the garden. You must not touch it or you will die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said. "God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. So it seems like she said, well, this is a good thing to do. It's good to eat, it's pleasing to the eye, and also I'll gain wisdom from it. So it seems like it's a win-win for me, even though I was told not to. So according to the story, the woman did wrong because there was a rule she was supposed to follow, which was not eat of this, but she broke this rule. Why did she break it? Well, because she thought that this was a good thing to do because it would benefit her, that it was in her self-interest to take this fruit and eat of it. So we're wondering why people would do wrong, and Socrates has an explanation that works pretty well in this case to explain why the woman did what outward observers would consider to be the wrong thing to do. So Socrates says, people act in their self-interest. We always do what we think is good for ourselves. So she saw that the fruit was good to eat, and it was pleasing to the eye, and that she would gain wisdom from eating it. So it seems like it's in her self-interest to do it. So that's what's motivating her to act. We do what we think is good for us when we act. And so if we think it's good for us, then we think it's the right thing to do. It's good for me, therefore it's the right thing for me to do. And this is Socrates' analysis of what motivates people to act in certain ways. Sometimes people make mistakes. Socrates sees people as being fallible in this way. We don't have complete knowledge of things, or at least we get confused because we want things so badly. We think we're doing what's good for us, but we're wrong that it's good for us. Now the woman sees the fruit and says, oh, this is good for me. I should eat of it for that reason, because it's good to eat and it'll give me wisdom and it's pleasing to the eye. Not realizing that it's actually bad for her to do this. So she's just motivated by her self-interest initially, making a mistake about how wrong this action is because she's disobeying this rule that God set up. So the woman doesn't realize that this is really bad for her to do this, that breaking this rule will have negative consequences for her down the road. She acts on her immediate self-interest, her immediate wants and desires, not realizing that what she thinks is good is probably good in the short run, but in the long run is not good for her. So Socrates' main point here is that people will act in a certain way and they'll do wrong, but the reason they do wrong is because they think it's right. They're making a mistake. They're acting in their self-interest, but they don't realize that it's really in their self-interest to do what's right. In the woman's case, it would be in her self-interest to follow the rule and not to eat of the fruit, rather than giving in to her immediate wants and desires. And in the writings of Plato, he talks about this idea, uses this example from Greek mythology called the ring of Gyges. And Gyges has this ring that he's found that gives him the ability to turn invisible, and he uses this ability to commit crimes of various sorts. And the question that Socrates raises in Plato's dialogue is whether having this ability, if you could do wrong and get away with it, would you do wrong? Would it then be in your benefit? Now he suggests that no, it wouldn't be in your benefit because it would actually be harming you, that you should do good even if you can get away with it, even if you don't get caught, that it would still be in your interest to do what's right. I'll leave that for you to think about. So you may have heard that crime doesn't pay, and so Socrates thinks that crime doesn't pay even if you get away with it. A lot of times we think it doesn't pay because you might get caught. Socrates thinks that you're harming your soul by wrongdoing. So the idea is that, well, you're ignorant that wrongdoing actually harms you even if you get away with it, because wrongdoing harms your soul and makes you into a kind of a corrupt person. So according to Socrates, why do we do wrong? Well, we do wrong because we are ignorant that it pays to be good. That even if we do bad and get away with it, we're still harming ourselves because we're harming our soul. So there's an image of Socrates there in this painting by Raphael. Wrongdoing harms your soul, so it's always in your best interest to do what's right. So we do wrong out of ignorance. That's what Socrates thinks. And what is the ignorance? The ignorance is that wrongdoing harms your soul. The ignorance is that you don't know that it pays to be good. So that concludes this first part of our lectures on the topic of evil and good. Cheers.